Midlife crisis. What is it, how to survive, and why is it so important? Midlife crisis is a life stage that occurs between 35 to 55 years old, which as a result of analytical work of the psyche leads to disappointment and resentment because of the discrepancy between the accepted norm and the real state of affairs. To put it simply, a person is puzzled by his achievements and successes, comparing them with what the society expected from him and with what goals the individual set for himself. The greater the difference, the deeper the crisis. Feeling the lack of resources, lack of time for retraining, fading health, loss of external attractiveness, and so on, a person faces an anxious state, as he realizes that it will be much more difficult to achieve what he wants than before. And if it was not possible then now it is unlikely that anything will work out at all. And if so, where to look for the meaning of life and what to do in its second half? Positive manifestations of the midlife crisis. Carefree and lightness is behind, old age is ahead, and now it's time for a change. Approximately so characterize the midlife crisis psychologists working with this problem. According to the observations of experts, it is in this period people are more prone to risk and show readiness for radical changes. Many former fears are blunted. The psyche simply extinguishes them, utilizing them in the subconscious. Pan or disappear, that is the main motto of these people. If earlier a person was afraid to have children, thought a lot about the readiness for responsibility, calculated the budget, fixing in it deficits, carefully select a candidate for the role of mother or father of his child, then in the midlife crisis experiences go to the background. Women decide to give birth for themselves. Men are more willing to agree to the proposal of a companion. Whatever happens, no one starves to death, we will manage somehow. If earlier a person managed personal finances quite strictly, investing and saving them in all available ways, then during a midlife crisis there is often a reassessment. What's the point of keeping a suitcase of money if life goes on and at some point I just won't be able to use the savings? I want to drive a car now, I want to see the sea as soon as possible, I want to make a good renovation so that I never have to go back to it immediately. The fear of embarrassing myself and not being able to cope with the tasks at hand can also be dulled. What do I have to be afraid of? Most of my life is behind me. There are not many active years left. I may be alive in my old age, but I can hardly live. Approximately with such reasoning, an individual easily takes up a new profession, advanced training, or going into another, previously unfamiliar sphere of activity. The desire to radically change your life is perhaps the main advantage of the midlife crisis. It is worth a little delay and there will be a feeling that it is too late, so it is important to realize that this stage is very short and lucky for those who took advantage of it. The main causes of midlife crisis, the reasons are actually a huge number. All of them can be structured and divided into groups, at the head of which will always be a mismatch of expectations with reality, or fear of impending old age. Men are more often concerned about the deterioration of health and loss of strength, lack of financial success and uncertainty in life. Lack of support. Women are more likely to focus on family, relationships, loss of previous attractiveness, and health problems. But it's important to list the major emotional upheavals. Empty nest syndrome. Feed, teach, let go. Such a phrase is popular among psychologists who have found in it the perfect parenting plan. Unfortunately, many parents have found in their own child emotional support, which allows them to maintain self-esteem, feel important and needed. Without me you are nothing, only I can take care of you, I know what is best for you, thanks to me everything is fine with you. And then suddenly there comes a moment when children grow up. Already in adolescence a rebellion begins, the child declares its individuality, fights for the right to decide independently how and where to move on. The power of the parent is melting before their eyes. Out of the blue, he claims that they can do without his help, and all his advice is not perceived as authoritative. All this only reinforces the feeling of old age, unfitness, and loss of relevance in the modern world. It would be great to accept objective reality and find a use for yourself in something else. Children have grown up. It's time to let them go and take time for their hobbies, pastimes, development. But this task is beyond the capacity of a narcissistic mother, for example. It is impossible to accept the fact that the child can live without her participation. It is necessary to hold, suppress, subdue, put sticks in the wheels. And this arrangement of events multiplies the midlife crisis. It will not end until she does not let go of her child, does not pass the stage of separation and build a healthy relationship with him. Comprehensive loneliness already from the age of 35 onwards, all the way up to 55, we are faced with the loss of previously built communications. Children have always been there for us, but now they have other interests, their own personal lives, affairs, and concerns that have nothing to do with the parent. They distance themselves and thus deprived one of the pillars. At the same time, the romantic union, having passed through all stages of its development, often reaches the final. Much has been experienced, former hobbies and affairs left behind, life has settled down, former strength is no longer there, health begins to fail. There are fewer and fewer mutual interests, goals, and plans. Grown children become another reason for reducing the zone of mutual responsibility. Many decide to dissolve the marriage or, in search of new sensations, have partners on the side. As a result, the spouse leaves altogether or becomes indifferent. Loneliness increases. Friends and girlfriends do not have time for leisure time together. Someone has a daughter who is a student, and the whole family is puzzled by her enrollment. Someone's son has gotten married and it's time to take care of the grandchildren. Someone is rapidly moving up the career ladder. There are also those who have become drunk or hooked on illegal drugs, collapsed to the social bottom. Former connections are torn one after another. A person is overcome by sadness and apathy. It is not easy to build a new social circle, and the old one sank long ago. Downward trend of external attractiveness. It is very important for a person to feel outwardly attractive, as it is not only a tool for achieving goals but also a strong support for self-esteem. Even if it is stable, you still want others to like you. That's how our psyche works. But there comes a moment when you suddenly find that the former beauty is a thing of the past, the trend is downward, and it is absolutely clear. You see with your own eyes where things are going. One day, a man will notice a gray hair, and 6 months later there are hundreds of them. Then there's a bald spot on his head. In the mornings you feel dizzy, your knees crunch, and after a party with friends you have to take pills to at least open your eyes. As a habit, we took up physical work, and then 3 days lying motionless on the couch, waiting for his wife to put gel on his back. Tore a muscle. The woman is no longer able to fight cellulite. After washing her hair in the bathtub are scraps of hair. From heels, terribly sore feet, which in the morning, and swelling. Tests are no longer happy, with hormones a complete mess. Wrinkles grow like mushrooms after rain. Young girls no longer perceive a man as a sexual partner, more and more often referring to him as you. Guys do not look at the velvet skin and slender figure, simply because neither of these things are long gone. And of course everything can be completely different. We know stories about young wives who fell in love with much older men. We also know stories about the attraction of 20-year-old guys to 40-year-old women. All this is true, but the midlife crisis is characterized by the fact that a person sees only the negative side of what is happening. Foggy prospects. As a rule, up to the age of 35, and even more so up to 55, a person has come a long way, devoted a huge amount to family and work, but at some point he realized that he was building a sandcastle. A similar feeling once overcame me at a young age. I drove 300 kilometers daily with my boss, stood at the factories at night, traveled to other cities, but then I realized that I was flushing my life down the toilet. My efforts are rewarded only with a salary which, firstly, is not that big, and secondly, does not provide for my future in any way. Pretty soon I won't be able to work such a busy schedule, but if the boss was getting contracts and substantial fees, I'll be left with nothing when I quit. Retirement is a long way from China, and the retirement age is about to be raised, and I have no capital. So what am I wasting my best years on? That's when I started investing, went to study first as a financial consultant, then as a psychologist, started gathering a client base, got into creating websites which I later monetized and sold some of them. Something similar happens in a midlife crisis. A person looks back, sees a huge amount of effort expended but sees no capital. The children will grow up and leave, the husband or wife did not guarantee you love to the end, the appearance becomes less and less attractive, and there are simply no assets. You have to rethink your life, but more often than not it ends in disappointing conclusions. Everything was for nothing and the prospects are dim. I'm left at a broken trough. What to do? For starters, it's worth recognizing that your condition is completely normal. The psyche is going through a key stage. It is fulfilling its basic functions, and analyzing is not something terrible. It is in the midlife crisis that you, thanks to apathy, get the opportunity to stop, to get out of the cycle of events, to think, to evaluate. This time is given for reflection, and it is not at all necessary to go into negativity. Then it is worth paying attention to the studies of scientists. At first we observe a rise in the level of happiness, then there is a sharp decline. It falls just at the midlife crisis, but then inevitably follows another upswing. Simply put, the psyche is literally designed to reduce reactions and look at the dark side of life. It's as if you're about to drive a car up a hill and inevitably have to downshift. The sound of the engine makes you feel a strong sense of exertion. The car does feel hard, but very soon you will feel satisfied. The crisis was necessary for growth. How to survive it? It is difficult to give any advice because everything is individual for each person. But we can look at the experience of those who have already driven up the mountain. As a rule, the methods of confronting the crisis are almost always the same. Let us list the most popular ones. People start to take care of their health, walk more, go to the gym, follow a diet and proper nutrition. They add more vitamins to the diet, refuse harmful products. For example, after 50 years of age, milk is no longer digested by a person. There is no benefit from its consumption. Similar tips you can easily find in books on nutriciology.it. Is time to build new communication links. There are a huge number of people over 40 on dating sites. They actively get closer to colleagues, partners, and training. New friends appear to replace old ones. Time spent on children begins to be redistributed, and as a rule in crisis people prefer to devote it to hobbies, creativity. These days there are many services that offer a new profession. Frankly speaking, here you need to be smart about choosing a school. Unfortunately, there are many irresponsible. Judging by the complaints of students, almost everywhere take money, but practical skills do not provide, do not keep in touch with the student. Nevertheless, the demand for training is impressive. The world is changing, former professions are becoming irrelevant, and you being in adulthood can easily apply your knowledge in something completely unfamiliar. Getting additional skills can still change your life dramatically. Women are more often than before engaged in shopping and self-care. Sometimes it comes to plastic surgery, but in most cases, everything is limited to cosmetic procedures. And do not underestimate this step. Personally, I constantly notice that a woman in her 40s looks even better than 10 to 15 years ago. If it were not for the midlife crisis, these changes might not have happened. But there is the other side of the coin. A person who is on the edge begins to realize that it will not be better. All his negative beliefs in this period are strengthened. Often life is organized according to the principle, if I fail, then you don't need it. We meet such people every day. They try to forbid, take away, condemn everything. They hate young people because they do not want to repeat their depressing path. They have the opportunity to achieve what they want. Then it becomes unbearable to look at someone else's success, and there is a desire to interfere. On the background of falling self-esteem, one wants to join some strong group, to be a part of a big victory. Conformism begins to worsen, taking the most monstrous forms. All this eventually turns into contempt. People dislike those who feel inferior and try their best to make others like them, in order not to seem like a complete loser against their background. Toxic personality falls into isolation, which once again achieves self-esteem. Midlife crisis is not just a stage of evaluation of the past life and prospects for the future. It's the line that will forever divide your personality into two parts. Yesterday and tomorrow. It's up to you how long it will last and how it will end. Trying to hold on to your children and spouse, blaming friends and family for distancing you. You will receive a series of severe blows to your self-esteem. Become a toxic, aggressive, resentful, nasty person. Take what is happening for granted and decide to finally change, then you will get a chance for a qualitative leap. Many men complain that young girls do not pay attention to them because of baldness and potbelly. But let's be honest with ourselves, it's not about that at all. The world knows examples of the opposite. When it is firmly standing on his feet, gray-haired man became an object of love and lust. A woman who hates the whole world is convinced that she was dumped because she is no longer a 20-year-old slender student. But in fact, it's all about the fact that you locked yourself up, closed yourself off, turned into a cheapskate who every minute saws rude, boorish, demands something, scandals with someone. You got a dog because your psyche needs to take care of someone, but neither your husband nor your children could not stand your care. Midlife crisis is a time for rethinking. Maybe you are climbing with their help where not asked for, maybe shifting your area of personal responsibility on the partner, maybe your kindness is more like a blow to the head with a ladle. Perhaps your fears of change have driven you to a dead end and you've been sitting in a swamp for a year now, reassuring yourself that this is normal and the status quo is better than any change. Midlife crisis is a time of opportunity and a starting point. It is very easy to miss these opportunities, but you will have to move on. The only question is what path you will choose. Will you meet your age or other people's expectations? Will become a funny 40-year-old man or hating all-around tyrant? Will you want to reach out to you, or will you want to run away from you? It's time to choose. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share your opinion in the comments. Feedback is important to me. Don't forget to support the video with a like and subscribe to the channel.